it's all his fault. Just like I said, I was right. Suck it.
From the outside, Modern Family's Claire Dunphy is a traditional housewife.
Call me old-fashioned, but I wanted to focus on raising a family.
But underneath her pretty blonde, holding everyone together exterior, there's a woman who's also a sort of husband. Though life has dealt Claire the cards that initially keep her at home with her 3 kids, she actually doesn't fit the stereotypical housewife mold.
The girls never had a chance to see the other side of me. You know, powerful woman in charge.
Yeah, because we never get to see her tough side.
She often performs her mothering role out of a sense of duty rather than an obvious maternal instinct, and she is far less emotional than her breadwinner husband, Phil. Claire also feels like the more dominant personality in her marriage, but despite their tendencies towards less gender-scripted roles—
Hey, you remember the day I proposed to you?
Of course I do. I don't remember the exact date, but yes.
March 19th, 1994.
in early seasons, neither one of the Dunphy parents is able to explore their natural skill sets. So as Claire goes back to work, in many ways, the Dunphys' journey over the show's run is towards a more utopian ideal of the family, where everyone is able to play to their strengths instead of remaining boxed in by prescriptive and restrictive roles. Here's our take on Claire Dunphy, the model for the husband wife.
Phil, honey, we'll do Valentine's Day later, okay?
If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified about all of our new videos. In order to understand Claire's psychology, we need to understand the traditional husband role a little more. Historically, the husband was the head of the household, and the role came with almost absolute power over finance, property, and members of his family, including his wife, who ordinarily didn't work.
I'm a housewife.
Multiple factors ranging from feminism to recessions mean that the roles of men and women at home and in the workplace have increasingly diversified. But for Claire, there's a personal reason she's gravitated toward more traditionally male attitudes and behaviors from an early age. She had an extremely strained and competitive relationship with her mother, who provided Claire with no support growing up.
My mom never went to any of my stuff, I'm fine. Because she was an incredibly competitive woman who didn't like to see me do very well at anything.
So she turned to her father, Jay, for guidance. As a result, Claire emulates Jay's behaviors in a lot of circumstances, including the way she connects with other people. This is important because Jay is a very typical of his era patriarch, and Claire has inadvertently learned many of his rules on how to interact with family.
Dad, you being so emotionally closed off makes it very difficult for your children to show affection.
She spends much of the show's run attempting to make up for and even unlearn these behaviors, but still, she's much less emotionally motivated than Phil. While Phil performs much of the family's emotional labor, doing traditionally feminine jobs such as remembering anniversaries and planning out beautiful gifts,
It's the actual porch swing where we had our first kiss.
Claire regularly forgets their anniversary, messes up presents, or neglects the more sentimental side of things.
You're so sweet and nice, and I can't even give you a decent anniversary present.
Though she lacks many feminine emotional tropes, there is one stereotypically female trait that Claire seems to embody. Early in the show's run, many fans commented on the fact that Claire was a nag. Phil managed to insinuate it in an early Valentine's episode where the two are role-playing different characters.
She's always so tired, and she's always making lists of things for me to do.
Maybe if you did them, she wouldn't be so tired.
Oh no, she can make lists for days.
But the attributes that these people dislike in her, such as her brusqueness and perfectionism, are actually key aspects of Jay's character, ones which he isn't derided for. As Alex says in season 3, when Claire runs for council and is referred to as unlikable,
That's just the word men use for powerful women because they feel threatened. So just forget everything else and be proud and powerful.
Meanwhile, Phil takes on a more gentle and emotional aspect of parenting, reframing the typical TV dad-husband role. In traditional TV families, the man is often cast as more aloof than his wife, taking a more formal relationship with the children because he doesn't know them as well, as he's out at work all day. In these typical portrayals, it's the wife's job to provide the children with affection and support, as well as facilitate their social lives and help with schoolwork. The father and husband's role is often framed as primarily financial, while the mother's infinitely more emotional role is priceless, and therefore not financially rewarded. But in the Dunphy house, Phil provides a lot of emotional support.
I know it hurts now, sweetheart, but that's how you know it was a relationship worth having.
Thanks, Dad.
And it's actually Claire's determination and shrewd business mind that keeps the household running smoothly in early seasons.
We have 6 hours totally kid-free on, the 14th.
Hey, if we moved Alex's flight, we could have like 10 or 12 hours.
Dream bigger, hot pants. Step aside.
Because Claire is shown to derive a lot of value from work and financial compensation, in early seasons, she often seems to wonder what it would have been like if she could have stayed in the workforce rather than becoming a stay-at-home mom. In season 1, we meet her former colleague, Valerie, who now has Claire's former dream job.
The thought of Valerie getting the one job in the whole company that everyone coveted, well, I wasn't a lover of that.
And we see that, in the face of this successful woman, Claire feels the need to justify her choice to stay at home with the kids, despite it being a common path for a mom in the 90s, and still for many now to have taken. We also see, even after she returns to work, she sometimes feels trapped and needs to get away from her family, not just the kids, but Phil too.
I may have mentioned to Frank that Phil might be available that week. The only thing better than a kid-free week is a couple of days carved out just for Mama.
This is very real-life realistic, but it's still a fairly unusual portrayal of on-screen motherhood. Claire doesn't enjoy the mundane everyday tasks of motherhood in the way that many TV housewives are shown to. She finds many aspects of the housewife role thankless and genuinely stressful.
I know that from the outside, it seems like I have everything together.
No, not really.
My point is that my life can be very stressful.
And because she's so type A, she often exercises control in these areas, arranging the kids' activities in an intense, near business-like manner. In the episode Good Cop, Bad Dog, Claire and Phil attempt to swap roles in an effort to give her an opportunity to be the fun parent. But the way that Claire's mind works turns having fun into a challenge, which she thinks she can systematize.
Who wants a milkshake? Milkshake, milkshake, 3 milkshakes.
I didn't really want a milkshake.
The way she handles things makes it seem to her family like she's really high-strung, which she probably is, but that's in part because she's in a role that doesn't fit her, and she's trying to find satisfaction by replicating business at home. However, these aspects of Claire's personality aren't necessarily negative. By bringing her perfectionist streak into ordinary everyday family affairs, she elevates them to her standard, and her shrewdness often serves them really well.
If you don't want people to come to you to solve their problems all the time, maybe don't be so good at it.
For example, even though Phil is supposed to be the emotionally intelligent spouse, it's Claire who susses out that Haley has lost her virginity and supports her through staying safe while keeping her secret. When Phil finds out, he has an overly emotional reaction, but Claire remains level-headed and trusting of Haley, which is a great parenting approach.
We can't treat Haley differently just because we both know what we know about her.
The show is unusually uncritical of Claire's tendencies towards traditionally masculine parenting and relationship interactions. This is in part because of the mockumentary setup, which doesn't allow for much analysis in the way that other shows do. However, Phil's softness and Claire's hardness are consistently highlighted in a way that often feels skewed in a favorable light towards Phil.
My perfect romantic husband who is far too good for this cold-hearted, bloodless wife bot.
In a way, this mirrors how in real life, many men who are more involved in family life or homemaking are widely worshipped for doing anything more than the bare minimum of what's expected. In a 2010 article about the post-recession shift towards men taking on more childcare while their wives worked, Tara Parker Pope, the author of For Better, The Science of a Good Marriage, quoted one house husband saying, "We have a social expectation that men simply won't be able to take care of their kids or meet their kids' emotional needs. But this is patently untrue. And it's interesting that the modern family writers implicitly position Phil's sweetness of character as only possible because Claire has an apparent deficit of this. Claire has given up a lot for her family, and she is often positioned as negative and almost overly realistic in the face of Phil's dreams. On multiple occasions throughout the series, we see that she shuts down some of his more outlandish ideas.
For the record, I don't squash all of Phil's dreams, just the ones that are, potentially fatal.
But if we look at these things from her perspective, we can see that this is a form of preservation.
Phil, I'm so sorry, but your business was just taking off and the kids were
No,
really
I don't want to hear it.
My own wife is the reason I don't have a career in magic.
Phil's character also highlights the way that men often enjoy domestic roles more because it's not something they feel expected to do. When Claire returns to work, he implies that she's had an easy time of it, staying home and looking after the house and kids.
After a 20-year vacation, Claire is rejoining the workforce.
Not a vacation.
This is a great illustration of how child rearing can be really fun when it's not your sole responsibility, or when it's something you feel you're choosing rather than it being externally imposed. Phil is able to be the fun, playful parent because his interactions with his kids are seen as a bonus. Meanwhile, Claire has always had to be bad cop because the admin side of parenting, which includes punishing the kids, falls to her as the main caregiver.
I don't like being you.
Oh, nobody does.
As As Modern Family progresses and Claire goes back to work, we begin to see a new side of her. Being more powerful in the world means she's actually vulnerable in a way we rarely see early on, with the exception of her town council run.
Why are you not running for office?
Because I don't want to lose!
In that instance, we see how damaging the combination of perfectionism, ambition, and stay-at-home motherhood has been to Claire's self-esteem. She no longer thinks she can achieve what she wants to.
I haven't done anything outside of my house in 18 years. I don't want the first thing I do to be a complete failure.
As she eases herself back into the workforce, she has to remind herself, and also Jay, her new boss, of the value of her experiences.
Dad, you seem to forget that I raised 3 children, and I had a career before this.
In later seasons, as she gets back into the flow of her career, we get a utopian snapshot of what a family looks like when everyone is playing to their strengths. Claire is comfortable bringing home money, while Phil is comfortable letting her do that, taking more of a pastoral role at home. And in response to feeling more fulfilled, Claire also becomes better at the big gestures that Phil loves. We see throughout the series that Phil's love language is basically giant PDAs. He likes to spoil Claire and he wishes she'd spoil him back. But at first, she has real trouble replicating that, because it doesn't come naturally to her.
You never want anything.
Things I want. Robot dog, night vision goggles, bug vacuum, GPS watch, speakers that look like rocks. I love my wife, but she sucks at giving gifts.
As the series goes on and she begins to be more fulfilled outside of the home, her domineering nature also seems to lessen somewhat around her family. But interestingly, she takes on even more traditionally masculine traits at this point too, and that includes in gift giving. After replacing Phil as the breadwinner when she has a large disposable income of her own, Claire is able to indulge him with the lavish gestures and spontaneity he desires. This aligns her not just with Jay.
Jay's very spontaneous. He's always surprising me with little presents, fun getaways.
But also with many men from TV who show their affection through expensive gifts. Claire isn't a traditional romantic,
You told Phil to take back your engagement ring and buy you a washer dryer.
and it takes her a while to work out how to show Phil she loves him. It turns out for Claire, buying Phil extremely expensive gifts, such as a magic shop, is her way of making up for what are framed as her former transgressions.
Our kids are grown. I run a company. You've got a great day job. I thought maybe it was time you picked up an old hobby.
Are those?
Keys to your new magic shop.
Meanwhile, what Phil picks up on, and this is something many men who buy expensive gifts are also guilty of, is that this still keeps Claire in control.
It's kind of funny that you're making up for making a decision that should have been mine by making another decision for me.
This shift in the family power dynamic doesn't mean that Claire simply adopts all masculine traits or Phil all feminine ones. It can be difficult to undo years of learned gendered behaviors. As sociologist Andrea Doucette says, you can't just reverse the genders. What Claire and Phil do show us, however, is that focusing on these traditional roles can be reductive because people's personalities don't necessarily fit with the roles we ascribe to them. Actually, Phil and Claire become closer by meeting one another in the middle. Earlier in the show's run, Claire hides how hard she finds her life, while Phil is happy-go-lucky. But towards the end, they are both more comfortable with admitting what's going on and communicating about how they can help each other get through it.
Remember how terrified I was when I took over from my dad? And suddenly, you were there. You just put your arms around me, and it made me realize I'm not going through this alone.
Now that she has appropriate space and time to flex her business muscles, Claire is also more able to see the magic in her husband's weird ideas.
We need to just face certain facts like corporate people are not creative, and ducks that haven't hatched in a month might never. Oh my God, Phil, I think it's hatching.
Likewise, Phil is more prepared to take on some of the less fun aspects of parenting. In Claire Dunphy, we get a rare, genuine portrayal of modern motherhood, a fallible woman who initially has sacrificed a career to raise her children, but isn't necessarily comfortable with her choice, and who shows us that as a parent, fulfillment comes in many different shapes and sizes. When we look at her closely, we can see that Claire really suits the provider role rather than the nurturer. She takes after her father, and in that respect, emulates many of the traits traditionally prized in a dad, but that doesn't stop her from being a great mom.
Someone will ask you to dance.
But what if they don't?
Honey, if they don't, then you do the exact same thing I told your sister, okay? Take 3 deep breaths and relax.
She approaches her relationships with her kids from a refreshingly logical and analytical perspective. Her type A personality doesn't hold her back from loving or recognizing what's wonderful about her family, even when they fail to meet her exacting standards. And they love her precisely because of that unique mix of qualities that is Claire.
Sometimes I don't know if I love how much I fear Claire or fear how much I love her.
This is The Take on your favorite movie, shows, and culture.
Subscribe so you can watch all of our videos.